All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session on how to engage patients in the early stages. We are very happy that you are here. This session, as you know, is part of the Patients Engagement Open Forum series. It's a series of virtual events now. It was live last year, but due to the current situation, we've turned it into a series of events online. So we're happy to see you here. We're expecting way over 100, maybe even 200. Just to make this session to flow a little bit better and smoother, we have a couple of requests for you. And also, we really would like you to engage through the Q&A and through the polls that we'll have for you. So in the next couple of hours, we will be sharing the content of the how-to guide that the group has been working on very hard in the past year. So after the welcome and introduction, just a very quick introduction to how did we get here, where do we come from, how did we come about to create these how-to guides in PFMD working groups and why this guide specifically. After that, we will share with you actually the content in its almost totality. So we have divided it into 3 sections: preparation for collaboration and understanding condition profile first. Then we'll take a quick break, after which we will go into the research methodology, and then also the last part of the guidance, which is from target product profile to target value profile. This guidance has been created with the early discovery and preclinical stages in mind, but we think that it might be useful for others as well. So stay tuned and welcome to join us today. So before we get started, please be present and engaged. Your microphones will be in mute mode because there are just so many people that we're expecting. I've already received a couple of messages that someone has difficulties, so hopefully the technical team will assist them. And if your colleague is asking how to get in, we have added the link on the website on the agenda, peopenforum.org, so they can join from there as well. Your microphones will be in mute because we want to avoid the background noise so that you can hear what the speakers are saying. Please provide your questions, comments, and feedback in the Q&A function. You should see it underneath your window there. So this session will be recorded because we will share it afterwards as well. And let's make this workshop really interesting together. For Q&A, with the past experience in other webinars, we know that sometimes you can't see other participants' questions, but actually we want to do this a little bit differently. We would have had this workshop in person, in a meeting, face-to-face. So we are treating it as such, but it's just now held virtually. That means that all questions will be shown with the name of the person who asked. So just as you would comment in a live meeting as well. So we ask you to please be respectful to each other like you would in a live meeting. You see others' questions, so you can upvote them if you have the same thing in mind, so there's no need to repeat the question again. And because of the time and because of the big group, not all questions can be answered live, but we are saving all the questions so that we can hopefully address them afterwards. And your screen should be showing something like this. You might not have all the controls, but you should see a Q&A function, which if you click it, it will open up to a small screen. Okay. With that, welcome. We are so happy to see you here. And I want to introduce to you our speakers today. This is just a fraction of the group that has been working on the guidance. We have most of the core team here. Unfortunately, Natasha and David could not join us. They have been very key in driving the work and developing the content with us. With me today, we have Nick Hicks, Carol Scrafton, Alex Gorbenko, Oana Bernard, and Merlin Williams. In the Q&A and our polling master, you will also see Karina from the Synergist PFMD team. So she will be helping you out if you have any technical difficulties as well. But first, I'd like to introduce our speakers. So Nick, would you like to say a couple of words of about yourself?
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, depending which side of the Atlantic you're on. My name is Nick Hicks, and I work with life sciences leaders to create patient engagement strategies across the life cycle. And I've been thoroughly delighted to be involved in this project, really from last year. So really looking forward to today.
Thank you, Nick. Carol? We seem to be having a little bit of technical difficulties. We'll come back to you, Carol. Oana?
Hello everybody. I think everybody hears me because the mic is not easy to put on. Good morning or good afternoon. My name is Oana Bernard Poenaru, and I'm working within Servier, a French pharmaceutical company. I'm an MD involved in R&D activities, and we are putting a lot of efforts currently internally to work with patients very early at research stages. So it was very important for me to participate in this work, putting some guidance for helping our colleagues.
Thank you, Anna. Do we have Carol?
You do. Hello, everybody. I'm Carol. I'm a patient representative, part of this multi-stakeholder team. I'm a patient advocacy organisation and community support online network, and with a keen interest in educating patients into clinical trial process and the importance of patient engagement, getting involved with pharma and researchers in general. And that's why I've been part of this.
Thanks, Carol. Thanks, Carol. Merlin?
Okay, excellent. Now it's been unmuted. Hi, everyone. I'm Merlin Williams. I'm a senior consultant, Executive Insight, a specialized healthcare consultancy. And I've always had a keen interest in patient engagement, and it's been really good to be involved in this, focusing on something novel, the early stage of development, and to get this multi-stakeholder perspective from the team.
Thank you, Merlin. Alex?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Alex Garbenka. I am working as a Global Patient Centricity Director for Ipsen, and in the industry generally approximately 20 years, last 10 years in medical affairs. I've been delighted to be a part of PFMD initiatives since 2016, and actually I'm happy to be a part of this working group as well.
Thank you, Alex. And from my side, I'm Chipa Karinam, Program Manager at the Synergist with PFMD, and together, like I said, my colleague Karina in the backstage, being our technical support and our polling master. So how about you? We would like to know who we have in the audience as well. So we're going to ask you a couple of questions and kick this off with an interactive part. So can you take your phone out or open another window in your computer, go to menti.com, put in 481781, and you should be seeing the questions live. . So in the Mentimeter, great, we already have 1, 2. Can you see the screen?
Yeah.
So go to menti.com, code 481781, and answer the first question. We'll give it a few minutes more to see if everyone to see that everyone has time. This is great. So as of now, it looks like we have more pharmaceutical colleagues here on the call. We'll go to the next question in a minute. This is really interesting. So we have 103. It seems like we're missing still a few comments. That's great. So we keep this open and we'll activate the next question. If you go to the next question, Karina. Did you attend our last session at the open forum in September? Once you have submitted your first question, the next question should appear on your screen. Great. So we have a lot of new people. That's really good to know. We'll take a little bit more time to explain the work itself as well. So we'll keep this open as well. You go with your own pace. The next question. So this is a two-tiered question. Do you have experience of doing patient engagement in the early stages? Or if you are representing a patient community, do you have experience of being involved in the early stages? So we have a couple of options there. You can choose the one that's most appropriate. That's great to see that there is quite a big group to have experience, some experience at least in patient engagement in the early stages. Good. And then we'll go to the last question. I think we have one more. Are you currently using any kind of patient engagement methodology or guidance in your work? So we have a couple of options there as well. And if you can't access, you can see it up here on the screen, menti.com. The code is 481781. You can still keep on answering. We will go back to our presentation and continue our content. So now that we know each other, let's kick it off. First, a little setting the scene to give you a little bit of a background where we come from. So PFMD, Patient-Focused Medicines Development, is a global and multi-stakeholder collaboration. We were established end of 2015 with a fairly small group of patient organizations in pharma industry. Today, you can see that the group is 36 strong, and we are aiming to keep the membership very balanced with patient organizations and pharma, but also other stakeholders like healthcare professionals and regulatory and research institutions. We have a very simple methodology. It's in 4 steps, and we apply this in everything that we do. If there is a suggestion for a project or a need in the patient engagement ecosystem, we usually go out to do a landscape analysis just to see what's happening out there so we don't duplicate. it's very important to us that we always collaborate, and if there isn't a project out there with the scope that we are thinking of, then we go into co-creation, which is what you're witnessing here today. The groups that we call PFMD working groups will start on defining the need, defining the scope, and work on the content to deliver the kind of tool or methodology or guidance that is needed. That will then go into piloting mode. We take the lessons learned, we go back in the beginning and apply to new projects. But the project at hand, the product or outcome that is being developed sorry, goes into piloting mode, after which it will be included in the patient engagement management suite. For this work specifically, we built on top of something that was created a couple of years ago in a multi-stakeholder environment as well. It's called the Patient Engagement Quality Guidance, that really sets the standards for good patient engagement. This is seven criteria that the group felt like you need to consider in order to have a high-level patient engagement, set up partnerships that really work well, and not go into creating projects that are one-off or just scratching the surface. And with this, if you implement this, we believe that you can create really meaningful partnerships and high-level patient engagement projects. The outcomes of this collaboration that continues here into these working groups as well. In 2018, those working groups produced the quality guidance, but in addition to that, also the book of good practices and set of do's and don'ts when you start your projects. I wanted to show you this just to show you how big the collaboration is. We have at the moment probably over 103. This was calculated a couple of months ago, and since then we have had a few more joining our network. So we have over 100 participants from 58 different organizations, but we also have individuals joining the work. So you can't even see all of them here in these logos. It's a massive undertaking. What we are doing is developing how-to guides, very detailed how-to guides in each of the phases, but also some that are transversally useful. So for example, at the moment, there is a parallel session for plain language summaries for scientific publications. That's our other working group that is presenting their prototype and testing it there. So this group specifically, what do? We identified there is a need for a very detailed how-to guide in the early phases, because if you think of all the guidances that you know of, there you probably can name a few for the R&D, the clinical trial phase and later, but there are actually very few in the very early stages. So we consider this was a priority need. It was also very unique collaboration for us. Our objective for this group is build a so detailed and comprehensive how-to guide that you can use it when you start out your patient engagement journey in the early phases. Here's a little bit of a milestone and a list of people who are currently there. We have some contributors who have come in and left, and we have those who have stayed with us. So this slide would not be enough to name them all, but at least you'll see a few here just to highlight the multi-stakeholder, the involvement of all. We started in 2019 with content definition, and we're here now in Q2, Q3, finalizing our drafting, testing, reviewing with the groups. It will open up to bigger reviews, so you're welcome to join us in that review. Everything that we create will be disseminated or made available for you in a patient engagement management suite. It's called PEM Suite, and you will see here in the red zone all the how-to modules. So these will be ready in 2020, most of them at least. And if further, you can look through the matrix there. You can see there is training, there is also Synapse, the platform, and many more tools from our partners like Paradigm will be linked to as well, so that you can find all tools in one place. It makes it easier for you. So what have we done since last time? In the open forum last year in September, we presented to the audience the very first iteration. At this point, we had just come up with this model. It had 5 steps, and we gathered feedback. We presented the very, very preliminary content there, and we heard that not everyone will be starting at 1. Some people are in 3 and then need to move forward from there. So the most common or most frequent comment that we heard is, actually, it can't be this linear. You have to make a recommendation, yes, but you have to allow people to also start from where they are. So this is what we tried to do now. We wanted to make sure that the quality criteria is also built in, so that we can tell you exactly how to apply those quality criteria in each of the steps that have been now reshuffled a little bit, and it's turned into a spiral that will continue. So with this spiral, we want to say that it's a continuous effort. You can start anywhere from the spiral. You can go back, you can go forth, but at least it will let you know what steps there are, and you can use them as standalone, or you can use them as we recommend if you're completely new, start from step 1. So next, I will invite our speakers to tell you more about the specific sections. This is how we will structure the next hour and a half. So each of the sections will be presented by a couple of speakers. Then we have the Q&A. So please, during the presentation, use the Q&A box, ask questions, comment, challenge, give ideas. And then after the presentation, we will pick a few that we will ask the presenters, all the speakers, and then we'll go into polling, because we have a couple of questions for you as well. So we'll first take the first 2 sections, then we go to a quick break, and then we'll take the rest of the 2. All right? So with that, please welcome Carol and Alex.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carol. I'm the CEO of patient advocacy and online community support organisation, Fibroflutters. Thank you for joining our workshop today. I'm going to start us off by taking you through the preparation and understanding condition stage of our how-to guide, both of which are aspects of preparation and understanding the condition element of early development and preclinical research. Preparations before making engagements are useful and required to establish relationships, engage with patients, and develop an understanding of patient views and their ability to contribute to the study. Patients are essential in early development because they have the most unique understanding of the disease, because they are either born with it or they develop it at an early age. This puts us in a unique position to give researchers the practical insights into what living with the disease is like, what the disease feels like, and how it impacts our daily lives. Patients have an intimate relationship with their disease, and the role of this section of the early development is to work with researchers to help them understand our diseases better. It is up to researchers and scientists, with our help and support, to develop and understand the pharmacology and biochemistry of what we experience. Another purpose of this is to show how patient voice can be used to help researchers understand the condition by linking the effects we feel and experience at a cellular and molecular level. Included within your study preparations are the opportunities to educate both the patients and industry to ensure that everyone understands all of what is expected from them, understand the processes and the importance of gathering patient input in order to discover what the unmet needs are. I will now guide you through the processes of condition profiling and therapeutic area profiling before handing over to my colleague Olex, who will continue on with this stage and explain about gap analysis. Can we have the next slide, please, Jay? Condition profiling is a process that you use to gather as much information about the disease with a purpose to reveal the patient experience and perspective of what it is like to live with the condition. It is important because through doing this, you will discover the unmet needs of the patient in relation to their condition. We have the next slide, please. Therapeutic area profiling is the process of gathering as much information about the condition itself, gathering patient and healthcare professional insights, and understanding how well existing treatment options meet patient needs. Understanding which therapy and treatments treat which parts of the condition. For this, you might need a larger pool to consult from. It might include what therapies and drugs exist for it, and are there recorded unwanted side effects, the types of people who are likely to be affected by the condition so that you target the right type of patient for your study, and also what other research is currently being carried out for your chosen condition area. Can we have the next slide, please? There are two key important processes to help you wean out the essential information required for your study from the people who will help you to develop it. And yes, naturally I speak about patients, but they are not the only stakeholders who will be involved. It is good practice to remember that your key industry and academic stakeholders should also be considered during these processes to ensure that they understand why these processes are essential, and also the importance of what the unmet needs of patients are. As scientists and researchers, it is important for you to understand the patient experience to give you focus as preclinical research teams. Knowing the symptoms and side effect issues that matter most to patients are the crux of your study. Can we have the next slide, please? As scientists or researchers, creating a win-win scenario should also be at the forefront of your trial design. And this can be achieved if you incorporate the views of all stakeholders by working collaboratively and sharing knowledge with each other. It enables you to engage with patients better and therefore to progress and succeed with your research. This means science, academia, patients, care partners, healthcare professionals, and even those involved with the laboratory processes and testing elements of your study. Preventing potential bottlenecks from the beginning by taking this into account is always a worthy investment. Thank you for listening, and now I'll hand over to my colleague Olex, who will take this stage a step further and talk about gap analysis.
Thanks a lot, Carol. So it's a pleasure to collaborate with you on this part of presentation. And actually, you already covered very important steps. It's a disease profile, condition profile, and also therapeutic area profile. So I would like to highlight here just a bridge to the next steps. So the steps from basic understanding of condition and existing therapeutic options to the target product profile and next steps and research methodology. So to do that, we need to conduct a gap analysis. And traditional approach for gap analysis, I use this very nice symbol from London Underground, actually, because actually we always need, should mind the gap and understand how to fill out this gap. So first of all, as Carol mentioned, existing care options, it could be standard of care highlighted in the international or national clinical guidelines and recommendations, as well as clinical protocols. So that's why patients should be absolutely involved and aware of the existing protocols. And we highly appreciate some efforts of several bodies like ESMO, ASCO, HIV organizations as well. So just taking part in the guidance development, just to know what existing treatment options are. But not always we have a standard of care for dedicated medical conditions. We need to consider all possible options, including established best practice examples and best practices for these dedicated medical conditions for best interventions. So that's why it will be very clear what the key disadvantages and key gaps with the existing options. And that's why next step, it's we need to understand what is desired care options as per unmet medical needs, unmet patient needs actually. We will talk about this more in details during our presentations, expectations, preferences, and also it's very important to highlight today about the value-based approach. We shouldn't concentrate on treatment itself, on treatment options itself, but actually we should be concentrated on value to be delivered through these treatment options. And actually that's why it's a bridge to research methodology, which answer to the question how to fill out these gaps, and to target product profile and target value profile as a final outcome of these steps forward. So thank you very much, and it's a last slide for this section. So Chi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alex and Noana. So as you've heard already, in the first sections of our how-to guide, we introduce you to the importance of setting up the partnership, preparations that you can make, whether you are a patient organization or the research team or in academia or pharma. We'll take you through the understanding of the condition section as well, and preparations there, what you can do. And I want to go back to one slide just to highlight, don't worry, you will have the slides afterwards as well. But I want to go back to this. This will be in the guidance as well. It's just one option to share, to show you how we had envisioned the pathway from defining the collaboration goals, from setting up that partnership all the way to the very first forum, which we call now initial forum, but that's up for voting as well if that name is not sitting in your mouth really well. It's basically a very first meeting where patients and researchers come together to get to know each other, to understand how they could work forward. This is all in the very first chapters of our how-to guide, and I'd like to open it up for Q&A now. We're moving quite swiftly forward. So let's see. I'm checking out the questions. I see there our colleagues there have already been answering a few. So far, I don't see yet a question related to this content, but there is one from Kevin. So this question reads, could you say more about the distinction between unmet medical need and unmet patient's need? How do we surface the difference and what do we do with it? So can I ask Alex to take this first?
Yes, thank you, Chi. And thank you for this question. Actually, it's a great question. We always asking each other about what's the difference between medical need and patient need. So if it's the best to answer to this question, we need to understand what's the difference between patient-reported outcomes and what's the difference between and clinical outcomes. Clinical outcomes, it's very comprehensive topics. Actually, it's all types of outcomes taken from several areas, just from physician expertise, from instrumental laboratory tests. So it's all clinical outcomes, including patient outcomes, of course. protocols reported directly by patients without any interpretation by physicians or other persons. So if you're talking about unmet patient needs, it's exactly like patient-reported outcomes, like the example of patient-reported outcome. It's directly articulated by patients. What exactly patient want from the treatment, what exactly patient expect from the treatment, what they see as a gaps without any interpretation. It's very important to have very, very big clarity in terms of interpretation of patient outcomes. Carol, probably you have more points about that.
As a patient, with respect to patient unmet needs, it's things like the side effects, for instance, that you have from medications that you take. You might want to take a pain medication that doesn't cause gastric and bowel problems, for instance, because you have a condition that already gives you problems with that. You might have a problem even with something as simple as packaging, or the fact that there's a part of a symptom that you have that there isn't a medication for, or that you can't take, for instance. And going through this process helps to bring that to the forefront, because if we don't speak up and pass on the information of what it is that we want, then they can't do anything about it because they don't know, which is one of the reasons why I advocate quite fiercely, in fact, for research, and in the hope that patients will begin to get involved, because we can't sit there and complain about these things and not actually do anything to change it.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that answers.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Alex. I'll take another question here that had, let me see, I have lost it free here. It was about examples of involving patients in the early stages and the benefits of that. So I'd like to open it up for other speakers as well who would like to take it. Nick, maybe?
Yeah, thank you, Chi. I think it was Maria who asked that question on my little sheet here. Maria, I think one of the things about this particular initiative is that there is a lot of work being done in patient engagement a little bit later on, for example, in phase 2 and phase 3. And there's very good results in, for example, clinical trial endpoints, getting new PROs. But there is, as far as I'm aware of, there has been no real evidence, there's been no examples of any patient engagement in the very, very early stages, which is what we're doing here. And if there is somebody out there that could give me some examples, I think that would be great. But this is why this initiative is just so exciting.
Thank you, Nick. There is an upvoted question in the Q&A where a frequent question from our researchers is the time needed from start to the first meeting. So I'd like to welcome our panelists to answer that, if there is any standardized time needed from start to first. And I can lay the base for this a little bit. This is actually a very frequent question we hear as well within PFMD, within our working groups. I would like to say that it is, because it is a collaboration, it should be started early and the timeline should be set with the partners. We hear a lot of comments from patient organizations as well, saying there are rush timelines, they can't address all the requests that come in, and they have to prioritize. So with this guidance that we are creating, we want to also highlight the need and importance to take the time to establish that relationship. Any comments from our speakers?
So just one comment about timing. You're absolutely right, Shi, as early as possible. We need to highlight this as a general golden rule for everybody in research and industry, because in R&D, it's a big difference between R&D and other steps than we asking insights from and gathering insights with patients. Because R&D, it's continuous process, it's value chain, it's a medicine development continuum. That's why we need to get insight, advice, or information from patient experts on permanent basis. It's not ad hoc approach. And if we start in this earlier from disease condition, as Carol just presented, we starting just from disease from medical condition. We describing all aspects of medical condition. Even at the stage then only we have internal discussions about concept of future product. It's not even product profile, it's about concept, just idea. But even at this stage, in the stage of idea, we can invite patients and discuss disease profile and just identify gaps. So it's our message from this session.
Yeah.
Can I add a few words?
Oh,
Just on a practical point of view, I think on both sides, but especially on the pharma side, there are also some practical elements to set up, such as agreements, contracts, because these relationships have to be done in perfect transparency. So this takes time. And this is why also in terms of preparation, you need some time for these administrative things, setting up a place for the meeting, setting up agreements, defining who will do what and so on. And this takes a bit of time. It depends upon the people and the countries probably and so on. But there is this time to be set for setting up the relationship that is needed.
thank you, Oana.
Yes. Can I just say that
Yes,
Joanna's right as well, because it isn't just about that. It's about when you're building the relationship, it takes so long to build trust. And it is a well-known fact that as patients, we just have no trust. We don't trust. So putting us in there at the beginning, as early as possible, will help to build that. But not just build it for that. You can build on it and keep us and use us again and again and again.
Thank you, Carol. And with that, we would like to ask you a couple of questions, all the attendees here. You can probably see new questions activated for this section specifically. If you're not there yet, go to menti.com. And by the way, you can keep that window open because after each section, we will renew the questions, so you have that at hand. The code is 481781. And the questions that you should be seeing on your screen are, is this section comprehensive for the purpose? That's the first one. Once you have chosen the most appropriate options, the next question you will see, so we'll give this just a couple of minutes. I'm going to show the questions quickly here. The next question you would see is, would this section be useful for you? So we want to understand a little bit, how did you find? You don't know the full contents yet, but from the kind of scratch on the surface, what do you think? And also tell us, what would you add to make it more useful? So the code is 481781 in menti.com, and we'll keep the questions open slightly longer. There was one question in the Q&A, which I'd like to provide an answer to right now. There was someone asking about how do we find the most relevant patients. So in the guidance, we have a section in the preparation where we advise how can you identify patients organizations you can work with, or if there is no patient organizations in the condition, in that condition, there are other ways that we're suggesting as well. I want to also highlight that there are other collaborative partnerships that are working on this paradigm. For example, is one that will come out with a specific recommendation as well, which we will link to in our guidance. So go ahead, menti.com 481781, answer these questions. The questions will stay live and we'll move forward in just 10 minutes. So we'll take a quick break, cleansing the palate just a little bit, and we'll come back in 10 minutes just to keep it fresh again. So we'll see you in 10. All right, welcome back, everyone. We will, little by little, go back to the program. So sorry for the technical difficulties before. The intention was to show you a really nice video about the importance of patient engagement, the importance of working together, but for some reason we couldn't get the audio to work for you. So what you saw is just a video reel. Obviously, we're not virtual conference organizers. Bear with us there. We will take you through this session at least. So welcome back. I hope to see, and I can see participants coming back little by little. That's great. So we'll kickstart the next session here with creating a research methodology. And for that, we have Oana and Nick. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chi. I will start. I'm Oana, and I'm working within Servier, so I'm on the pharma side, but working on patient engagement. And so Nick, maybe you want to introduce also yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nick Hicks, and I work in the area of patient engagement and patient advocacy within life sciences.
Thank you. So maybe if I can have the next slide. Yes. So what it is about creating a research methodology? What is this all about? So let's go to next slide. Creating research methodology, it's about really how patients and pharma can work together for identifying the most suitable tools or approaches to capture and translate patient insight into early stage R&D activities. The benefit is that implementing this dialogue early will shape the way the research is conducted in terms of methodology, so it helps the researcher choose their scientific questions as well as their methods, the technical methods they are going to use to address those questions which matter to patients. The other important point here is that starting early helps early adaptation of the research towards a more patient-focused design of studies. And if you don't start very early, maybe sometimes it's too late for addressing certain very important questions to patients. So let's go a bit into more details with the next slide. How to start this, how to implement this dialogue very early and create research methodology together. The fundamental step to start with is to ensure that the research priorities align with the patient priorities. It's somehow about the question that was addressed a bit earlier about what is a medical need and what is a patient need. So important to remember that something that is a scientific interest or that matters to healthcare professionals might not be so important for patients, or patient importance is on other aspects. So it's absolutely mandatory to have a relevant research, for having a relevant research, to really focus on what patients say, this is the most important to me. So then, practically speaking, when you have defined this, how to align these research priorities with the practical things. This is the time to ask some powerful question. When is the best time for research priority setting? When this dialogue should happen in the research cycle? So clearly this needs to consider the pharma timings, because developing a drug is done in several steps over several months or years sometimes, and there are really critical times where this dialogue should occur. So this is to be discussed together between pharma and patients, because too early should not be relevant and too late should be ineffective, because the research studies are already set and defined, and sometimes difficult to change some important aspects to answer relevant questions. The other thing is what research aspects or topics can be discussed. Indeed, patients are not scientists. They are not to be put in this position, and they are not going to tell directly researchers what to look at, what tools, what scientific methods to use, on which animal model to work. So it's not directly this, but listening to what patients are saying. And this is coming back to what Carol and Alex highlighted about their vision of the disease, their vision of the drugs, what they need, what they would like. This informs really in a very important way how researchers are going to design their studies, what they are going to look at and assess. And let me give you a very short example. For example, researchers are working on a drug for a brain disease, let's say, and discussing with patients. They listen that patients say with the previous drug for this disease, they had some very bad effects on the gastrointestinal system, and the problem was in relationship with the gallbladder. So while it's not life-threatening, it's really very, very heavy for them, and they would like, if a new drug is to be discovered, this effect not to occur. Initially, the scientists wanted to assess the safety of the molecule they are working on rats. And listening to patients, they say, okay, so we will change the model here, because listening to patients, we need to assess the gallbladder effects, or the rat has no gallbladder. So we need to choose another animal model for answering this question. This is, for example, how practically the patients can have an impact, a clear impact on the research and the way it is done. What methods are best is another powerful question. How to facilitate such meetings? Who needs to be involved in the RPS? And all these elements are detailed in this how-to module we have built together. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, important things, let's switch now to some important preparation points before the patient engagement starts. It's important to understand the capacity building needs of both researchers and patients, because those people have to discuss together. And if patients need to be aware of the pharma cycles, what is the research about, how things are done, why researchers are doing such things, it's also important for researchers to have the capacity and the talent to make their complicated work simple to understand for people and to be at ease in dialoguing with patients. So this also sometimes needs some training. Also, draft research plans that are to be discussed with patients need to be in patient-friendly language, and this is to be prepared. Another important point is to appoint a steering group for project management. This relationship will last a certain time, will address complex questions, will have to manage various expectations with a mixity of people. So really a steering group who helps define the best way to do these things and mitigate certain things is really very important. And with this, I will give the floor to Nick for the other important points of patient engagement. You are on mute, Nick.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ona. This really is the pivot point from talking about the internal preparation, then going external. Now, I just want to re-emphasize what Ona has said, is that the more time and effort you can put in getting the fundamentals correct with the steering committee created, getting the right mix will ensure that subsequent projects will be a lot more fluid, and you're going to be able to meet key milestones far more effectively than if you just rushed at it. Now, what's the best way to kick off a project? Well, normally one of the ways which seems to be coming in a lot now is that the patient members of the original research setting priority panel sent out some anonymous questions in advance. They received these, and they came back from they gave feedback, and based on that feedback, then a special meeting was created whereby these people actually came to either the pharma company, the research lab, or the research institution. Now, importantly in the times of COVID, because we haven't talked a lot about that, but certainly for the next 6 months to perhaps a year, these type of meetings are going to need to be done through web. So it's very important to be very clear at the start what you want to achieve, but also don't attempt to do too much too quickly, because just as we're all adapting to using webinars now, there is a different type of dynamic involved. So do plan for working effectively with webinars. And one of the key things which is going to come out of this is what are the key milestones which need to be agreed, and how is feedback from the group going to be given, received, and fed back into the overall research process. And very often these types of meetings now, because we're all on the web, probably I would say about every 1 month to every 2 months is probably what is a good way. But again, a lot of all of this was in the document. Could I have the next slide, please? Yeah, now this slide 6 and slides 7 are very closely related, is that what is the best format? And it really does depend. Now, the good thing is that all of these activities which you're looking at here, these are all currently being used in later stage development. So people within companies, within institutions, and also a number of patient groups and patient advocates are quite familiar with these. What is different, though, is how these are being used, or how this model is being proposed to use these activities very, very early on. And that's the crux of this, is to co-create the right type of methodology using full deep dive engagement rather than the more traditional historical tokenistic tick box which was used. I'm not going to go through all of these. If there's any specific questions coming up, we can handle them in the Q&A. Could I have the next slide, please? What is the best format for the engagement? Now, as I said, that some patients are already very, very familiar with these types of activities, but this has to be built into the timeline as to what you've got, because there are a number of aspects which have to be followed. For example, that the patient groups have to understand that pharma has to work in a certain way to very strict guidelines, and therefore they have to work in certain ways. And this means that it can take a lot longer. So that's all part of the internal preparation, but also whether you're a CRO or a researcher or whatever, don't expect to reach out to a patient group with who you've never worked before and expect them to jump headfirst into helping you develop an early stage research strategy, for example. That takes time, and that's something which Carol mentioned earlier on. Identify the particular type of project, of methodology, which is relevant to where you are in the research cycle. Some may be more relevant at the very early stages. For example, in-depth one-to-one patient interviews can be very useful at this stage rather than later on. And also what's worked before. There's no point in reinventing the wheel. Can I have the next slide, please? Stakeholder representations. Now, this has just been touched on very briefly, but it is very important when you're creating this research team to ensure that you have a diverse mix of people. Now, from the industry or the research side, you can have regulatory, bench scientists, and what is coming up more and more now in the management literature is that scientists, researchers need to have both hard and soft skills, particularly emotional intelligence, which allows them to keep the patient in front of mind as they're pushing all of these different molecules through the drug design process, but at the same time still maintaining the necessary scientific high level of scientific thinking, which is needed as well for robust results. Now, who do you bring in? Well, it really does depend. This is very much a generality, but patient groups are very good for giving an overall view. Individual patient advocates are very good for giving raw data. But often I think one of the things that we can miss here is that while English and the UK, and I'm in France, it's always been a traditional centre of patient engagement. Not all patients are English, and not everybody and not all patients speak English. So it's really important to have a cultural diversity, because different cultures, different countries communicate disease in very, very different ways. So that is something which will need to be thought about. Also, if you have what's the specific type of expertise which is involved here? Is it, do you need specific patient advocates with an experience in PRO design, for example, or do you need some who have a greater understanding of just basic science? It really does depend. So do your planning first of all, going back to Iona's point, and working out who needs to be in that group and what you want them to do. Yeah, and all have a role to play at different times and with different methods. The next slide, which is the summary slide. Really, I'm just going to pick a couple of points up on here, is that probably the most important point, which keeps on coming out through the whole of this presentation, is start as realistically as possible. Prepare internally before you go external, whether you're a pharma company, a research institution, and a patient group. There's a lot of learning you have to do before you actually meet together and start talking about this. Be very clear about what you want to do. 100% transparency is the way these initiatives work. And if you are going, though, working with patient groups, for example, particularly again in the times of COVID, is that do understand that patient groups now are working with two agendas: their own agenda for their own disease, but also that of the one of COVID, and they have to make their own disease relevant in times of COVID, in times of policy and health making. And that's probably a good point to stop.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Oana. So we'll take just a few minutes for Q&A, and then we'll have a couple of questions for you as well. So it's really nice to see the interaction in the Q&A. I'm going to go through a couple, and I see that our speakers have been answering some of the questions already, so keep them coming. Please use the Q&A to ask and comment on what you're hearing right now. Of course, it will be hard to see, to understand the whole guidance at the moment, because you're not seeing the full content. This is just a sneak peek to what is being created and what you will see later on, end of summer, beginning of autumn. So I'm gonna just pick in a couple of questions. I'm gonna check for the ones that have been upvoted. There aren't too many. There is a very good point from Jane saying that if you are, especially for patient representatives, if you are involved in a large scale projects, it can be very consuming. That's completely right. So here's one. What insights can you share regarding the duration, time frame of the pathway to patient input, and how do we best support this developmental work in it It sounds like a challenging question, so I'm going to open it up to all of the speakers who would like to take it. Your mics are on mute.
So Chi, this is Oana. I can try to start answering, but this is just part of the answer. Yeah. I think first that we saw that the patient, this relationship with patients should start early and should last all along the process of the drug development and so on. Of course, we are in a competitive world. However, I think that some of the pharmas working with patients have written some publications about patient insights, how this informed their research and so on, and they shared this with the community. So it's not largely done yet, but there are some publications yet. On the patient side, from what I saw, because I also had the opportunity to discuss with some people of from the EFNA. So they are really organizing themselves with several patient groups and so on to try to organize their own forum and invite the researchers and the pharma to a global patient community where they answer the same questions for the different pharmas or academics involved in this area, because they don't want to repeat themselves and do the work again. So this might be two formats of sharing who can really be helpful and go beyond this competitive stage, because at the end we all want better health, and there are also some elements to be taken at a pre-competitive level and sharing possibility. And this is also the goal of projects, consortia projects such as IMI, where there's a lot of sharing in spite of competition. I don't know if it answers at least part of the question, but that's it.
Thank you, Oana. There is another question here that was very interesting. How would you encourage patients to participate in this early research? I'm going to field this to Carol. What do you think?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, please, Jamie?
Yes, so there was a question here that asks about how would you encourage patient community to join these early research efforts?
Well, that's a difficult question, really, because it's about knowing where to go to find out where these things happen. I mean, for me, getting involved with the likes of PFMD was really the doorstep. Getting involved with and looking really for companies that are looking for patients to engage. Am I allowed to mention group? Am I allowed to mention Find Me Cure and Find Me Patients, for instance? Like if you're looking for trials for yourself, if you're wanting to look for a trial for yourself, you've got Find Me Patients, but Find Me Cure is something else that you could maybe get in touch with and find out how you can maybe collaborate there. It's finding the likes of, I mean, what IMI have engagement things, and Gruntal have, there's lots of different sort of pharma companies have patient pools, and it's just a case of tapping in your Google box and looking for them, really. Yeah. I can't really sort of give any other advice than using the good old social media and, and looking.
And I'll just, that's great, Carol, that you mentioned all those platforms, how you can interact and identify patients who could be interested in joining your research as well. Just to build on that a little bit, I think the importance is open communication. Definitely make sure that you reach out, that you share what you're doing. how you're doing it, how you envision to collaborate. That will bring interest to your work. So definitely speak up, reach out. With that, I'd like to go to the poll again. You heard the next section from Understanding Condition and Preparations. This was creation of developing research methodology together with patients. Please go to menti.com with the same code actually. You should be seeing a new section activated in there. The code is 481781. And the same questions. We like to hear how did you feel about this section specifically? Do you think it's comprehensive for the purpose? Would this section be useful for you actually? And if it's not useful, what would you add? What would you need more to make it more useful for you? Take a minute to answer those questions on menti.com. We'll start with the first one, we'll move to the next, and then we'll leave the third one open for you to answer during the next session as well. So next up, I would like to invite Alex and Merlin to present us the target product profile and going from the target product profile to target value profile. And just to base this a little bit, our guidance that we have developed, it follows the spiral structure, which really helps you set up the partnership to go through all these steps and ending up with a target product and value profile that will help you transition and further your research into following phases. And this is still working together with the patients. So Alex and Merlin, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Chi. So it's a final section, and I have quite a challenging task to explain probably the very complicated stuff, but very traditional stuff for researchers and for academia, for academic institution, called target product profile. And actually, please first slide, Chi, if you can move forward. So as Chi just mentioned, target product profile is a outcome of all our efforts here. And I really like one question just recently asked by one colleague, how to translate patient advice and patient insights to research language. And actually the question, target product profile, it's a translation of unmet needs. And we are not talking especially about target product profile, but I'm going to talk about target value profile. It's a little bit new. I would say it's a new terminology, and I would explain why we use this terminology. So next slide, please, Chi. So a very, very basic definitions. Why we are talking about target value profile. It's essential part of early drug development, but we now talking about only stuff which is really valuable for patients and valued the most. Some characteristics, minimally acceptable characteristics of the product, which is valued by patients most. And actually, why we're moving forward from definition of target product profile to target value profile, it's a general environmental reasons. Over the last decades, pharma is moving forward from product-centric models to patient-centric models. And actually, if you're talking moving to patient-centric models, we're talking about value. We're not talking about product. We're more talking about service and values associated with the delivering of this treatment, which is absolutely right way to do. So target value profile is consolidated set of expected and minimally acceptable characteristics of any asset. It could be biological product, vaccine, medical device, which are valuable and meaningful for patients and addressing areas of remaining unmet needs. Coming back to gap analysis, if we consider huge gaps, we need to fill out these gaps. So developing the target value profile, it's actually the answer, and it's a measures to fill out these gaps. And actually, target product profile, it's a basic concept, and actually basic concept taking into account several pools of data. Of course, value for patient value, it's a most important driver, but also public health settings, infrastructure, healthcare settings, business rational, because pharmaceutical companies, we need to we need to accept that pharmaceutical industry is a profit-making business. Of course, it's business case considered as well. So it's a lot of aspects considered, but again, that's why we are stressing and highlighting on target value profile. It's because the value for patients should be delivered first. Next slide, please. So it's a thank you very much for such a wonderful graphics from PFMD designers. Actually, we tried to explain this complicated process in a very simple way. So as you can see above, it's a medicine development continuum. As I mentioned earlier, it's from concept assessment and finally to the reimbursement and market availability in the market and traditional use as prescriptional drugs, for example. So you can see a lot of stages. It's early stages like lead identification, lead optimization, candidate validation or target validation. And upon target validation, it's real work starting and in researchers working with a medicine to develop this medicine. So what does it mean, target product profile? It's a guidance. It's a guidance for researchers. It's like a navigation tool for researchers to move forward through the medicine development. And actually to do that, we discussed, Anna and Nick just presented a research methodology. All research methodology should be consolidated in the integrated development plan. IDP, it's a very important document actually, which aim to meet, to tailor target product profile requirements. So what does it mean if you physically, how it looks like? Target product profile is a set of characteristics. It's a document, first of all. And this document, it's not just one setup document, it's an updatable document. Upon new data available, upon new insights, that's why you can see interrelation between target value profile, so what characteristics valued most by patients, and to feed in to target product profile. And again, so it's a permanent advice seeking, insight gathering, permanent process of implementation and embedding patient voice and patient insights. And of course, it's by business case, it's in parallel, it's developed, is it good for company to take this medicine and to develop this medicine? It's a manufacturing insights and also market analysis, it's in public health analysis and in healthcare analysis. So it's a lot of analysis taking part in parallel, but the most important message from this picture, it's interchange. And basic, we need to ask patients on each stage and just ask, what do you think? What do you advise? Is it okay? Is it relevant? And shall we move forward? So next slide, please, Chi. And just to be more practical, how it looks like. So target product profile document, just to be clear with you, it's not a strict regulatory document, and regulators not asking manufacturing and companies to send this document for approval. It's absolutely optional. The first process setting took place 13 years ago, because in 2007, FDA, Food and Drug Administration of the United States, developed the recommendations for research organizations how to develop target product profile. And actually, if you can see, it's a very, very basic expectations from the product in terms of indication, in terms of target population, efficacy, effectiveness. If you're talking about antimicrobial agents and some other medicines, it's resistance potential. But for example, how resistance could be potentially be growing in the future. Specificity and sensitivity, or for if you're talking about diagnostics. Safety profile, tolerability profile, it's a little bit different aspects. Clinical pharmacology, dosage administration or posology, it's called posology. Storage conditions, business rationale, value proposition, and value positioning. So what exactly, which value could be delivered through this product. But I would attract your attention to the two columns. From one central column, it's about traditional characteristics of target product profile. And from the right-hand side, you can see what does it mean for patients. It's exactly reflecting target value profile. And if you're talking about the same element, like target population, the interpretation could be absolutely different. That's why it's critically important to establish the target value profile and just collect and consolidate everything from patients, what really valuable for patients. So I would provide some flow to my colleague for some comments, Merlin. So if you have some comments about this.
Thanks very much, Alex. So the key here that we want to highlight is that some of these TPP elements that you can see on the left-hand side, these would be the focus of some of these engagements with patients. So some of these methodologies that we touched on before, focusing on highlighting and understanding and filling those gaps that we identified further on before in the start of the presentation. So taking these points, there's obviously a very scientific side to each of them. For instance, storage conditions. Of course, a molecule needs to have a particular characteristic so it can be stored effectively for transport, and then its use later on. But then we want to highlight the importance of thinking about it from the patient's perspective. So how can we think about this from their perspective and understand how can this play into their improving their quality of life and reduce the burden that taking this particular new molecule or drug could have on their life. So thinking on the storage conditions one, so maybe it's if something needs to be refrigerated, how can we make it maybe more, or think about how it could be more heat resistant so that maybe patients can go on holiday and go further afield to travel and enjoy their life to the full. So we don't want to think about these scientific perspectives just on their own. We want to think about it from a holistic sense. How can we make sure that patients are being considered in each of these steps? I think this is the focus that we want to say for this section. And in our guidance document, we have some questions for each side to understand, illustrate where we're going and how we can make some of these characteristics more patient-focused and understand how we can improve their quality of life. So I'll pass back to Alex now. And so we've got two examples that we just want to touch on, and I'll let him go through the first one.
Chief, if you can move forward. So why we selected these two examples, as just Marilyn said, we in the guidance document, we have all aspects clarified and all list of a lot of questions to be discussed with patients on the value profile actually. Why we selected two examples? Because tolerability profile and posology, dosage and administration. Because by my experience, a couple of years ago, we conducted 2 advisory boards on target product profile with patients. And actually, it's my experience that patients ask mostly about these characteristics because the tolerability, safety, tolerability, and dosage and administration, it's the most actual, since the most, probably 80% of our time in advisory board was devoted to this topic. So the first example, that's why we highlighted these examples just for visibility, for your visibility. And actually, first example, it's tolerability. If you know, tolerability is like a patient-reported outcome reflecting safety. So we're not talking about safety itself, we're talking about tolerability, how well patients tolerate this treatment. So if you can see some basic points for target product profile, it's a very, 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 I would say, formalized approach. It's a non-inferior, superior tolerability profile, again, with a comparison with a standard of care, for example. So reported with a previous treatment and comparison, it's a main approach for HTA bodies, health technology assessment bodies all around the world. Or percentage of potential users adopting tolerability issues. So users, it's not really good language. Or percentage of discontinuation due to tolerability issues. So they're talking about discontinuation. It's not specifically patient-friendly language. And non-irreversible tolerability issue, for example. But if you look to the right hand, What does it mean for patients? The questions formulated in absolutely different way. And it's absolutely different connotation here. So any expected irreversible tolerability issues. So not no irreversible, expected. Patient asking if we expect something, or percentage of study participants who accepted or withdrawn from the treatment due to tolerability issues, or what kind of patient-reported outcomes should be used to measure tolerability. It's a very, very 100% specific questions for patients. And what are expected tolerability issues? So actually, it's more open questions. It's more open informal discussions about value profile. But actually, having answers to the questions, we can very successfully feed into the target product profile and to have navigation tool for our researchers. So, and the second example, I pass the floor to Merlin. It's really pharmaceutical, very, very good, relevant example.
Thanks very much, Alex, again. So for this dosage and administration part, of course, we need to consider that there's a very scientific rationale behind some of the formulations that need to be developed, the method of the administration, where it needs to be administered, even the volume and the frequency. But these are all things that can be considered from the patient's perspective, as in what works best for them, and even what would not work for them, what maybe they would not like. For instance, maybe an intramuscular injection is quite painful for certain patient populations, and this is somewhat invasive for them. Maybe they want something that's more of a pill, or maybe an IV therapy. Things like this. So thinking about from the patient's perspective, how can we make sure that the treatment fits into their life so it reduces their burden? And when we think about this value aspect, I think we need to always consider that given that the future of healthcare is moving towards patients, they need to be the focus as the end users for these products. But of course, we need to think of multi-stakeholder discussions to understand from maybe payers' perspectives, from doctors' perspectives, how we can understand how to best position these characteristics and what works for everyone, but making sure that at the end of the day, this is something that is for patients. And with that, I would like to close this section of our discussion, and I think we can move on to questions.
Thanks, Marlene. Thanks, Alex. There have been a few really, really interesting questions that I'm going to take right away. And I'm going to give it to Merlin. There is a question from David asking, a product value profile describes the aspirational value of a product to all stakeholders, which centrally includes patients, of course. If the TVP addresses only the patient value dimensions, might this not create confusion with already well-established terms?
So thanks very much for your question, David. So I think this goes along the lines of what I just mentioned, that we need to be thinking how patients are the focus of healthcare, but also thinking how products benefit patients, but then also the impact it has on society and healthcare systems, considering that it's not just, we're not working in silos here. We're thinking how everyone in the society fits together, and focusing on how we can improve patient outcomes and how patients have a better quality of life. So in answer to your question, yes, I think we need to consider all stakeholders.
Thanks, Marlene. David also had a follow-up question on that, and this I will field to Alex. So the views of the HCP, so healthcare professionals and payers, is also crucial. And again, would this create confusion?
No, absolutely not. And I like I just answered to the comment, instead of target value profile, to use a patient value profile, which is really, really nice idea. I completely agree. We need to take into consideration all stakeholders. But at the early stage, the main methodological approach to separate these insights. We need separated insights, absolutely clear insights from patients, absolutely clear insights from HCPs or investigators, and absolutely clear insights from payers. Of course, we are doing that. We're conducting this research at earlier stage. We have advisory boards with several stakeholders. However, I would recommend, by my experience, to separate. It's exactly like the patient-reported outcomes. It's only interpreted by patients, not by somebody else. It should be clear vision of patients. That's why it should be separated. But of course, it's comprehensive, and we take into consideration all stakeholders. You are right.
Thanks, Alex. There was one more question in here about consolidating. What would be your advice in the best way to consolidate input from different countries and affiliates? Alex?
From countries, from countries.
Country affiliates.
So just to be clear, if you're talking about early stages, R&D, generally R&D, it's a very central function. It's always global. R&D never been local, it's global because it's multi-center. But if you're talking about clinical studies, yes, it's relevant because we have a lot of sites in several countries. And clinical sites and clinics which conduct in clinical sites and investigators. If you're talking about preclinical research, we are talking about 1 to 3 maximum centers, big research lab centers, where it's traditionally, it's biggest part in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in France, in Europe, because actually it's a very, very expensive units for companies. It's just limited number. So it's always global. We're not talking about countries here at this stage, but we can invite patients and patient experts all around the world. It's the beauty of such advice seeking. We can invite several stakeholders all around the world.
Thank you, Alex. Please keep on asking questions in the Q&A of all that you have heard. So what you have heard today is actually 3 sections. We had in the beginning preparation for collaboration and understanding the condition profile. We also heard from Oana and Nick about the developing the research methodology together, researchers and patients. And also now, as an outcome of all these steps, you reach the target product profile, which in turn can be translated with patients' input into a target value profile. What is the most importance to the patients for the research in question? So please keep on asking questions about the guidance, about content, about early research itself. I'm going to take a quick moment to take the next slide here. Again, please go on menti.com. 481781 is the code, and help us answer, what did you think of this section? Was it comprehensive for the purpose? So the purpose of this section was to help researchers and patient community to understand what the target profile, product profile is, why there is a value in creating a target value profile, why does it matter, how do you do it as well. So is this section comprehensive for the purpose? Would it be useful for you? Let us know. And if it's not, what would you add? How would you make it more useful? Take a little bit of time and answer. The questions will move forward. After you submit, the next question will come in. We can, while we are checking, I see our speakers are answering the questions, typing in the Q&A as well. You can check the answered questions. I'm going to open the floor to our other speakers if they would like to reflect on what has been asked, discussed, commented. Would you like to add something further?
I would like just add that we are developing the guidance, and actually it's not possible to cover everything during our presentations, and definitely it's going to be comprehensive documents. As for me, I just had at least 3 very nice ideas from today's forum, from feedback and from comments actually. And thank you very much for this feedback. It's really valuable. We are just going through the absolutely new area in Latin language. It's called terra incognita in patient engagement. It's absolutely the least explored area of patient engagement. And that's why it's absolutely first initial steps, and we're very grateful for your feedback.
Thanks, Alex. I see Oana wanting to comment.
Yes, initial step, exactly as you said, Alex, but initial steps often are crucial, essential, because all the rest is in the cycle and depends about what has been decided in the beginning. So this is really very important. We'd like to thank you for your questions. As Alex absolutely mentioned, the document is going to be richer, much more comprehensive and detailed than what we were able to deliver here today. And also sometimes some questions are related to things that are addressed by other documents. And as you said, Chi, the appropriate and relevant links will absolutely be embedded in this document, because we are not creating again and duplicate what has been done elsewhere, but we are really in synergy with other groups, and with all these tools, if they connect one with the others, we will have a complete set of what we need for engaging properly and good and effective relationships.
Great, thank you, Oana. Other comments from our speakers? I have one question for you, actually. You've been part of this PFMD working group for quite some time, some already in the previous working groups, continuing to this working group, from building the quality criteria to building the how-to modules. We've seen a lot of people joining us. We've gone into workshops. What has been really concisely your experience? Would you recommend it to others? I'm going to start with Carol.
I recommend this all the time, is my answer to that. People are always requesting and asking how to get involved. Obviously I'm in the UK, but I have a contingency of friends and fellow advocates over in America who are interested in PFMD, who are always asking how to get involved. And my suggestion is that they contact you, they go to the site. But yes, definitely get involved. It's a way to help create change. Change doesn't happen unless you get involved. And that's the way I look at it, really.
Thank you, Carol. How about Nick?
Oh, thank you, Chi. First of all, thank you for your wonderful facilitation over the past number of months, pushing this group around to get to today. Greatly appreciated. Absolutely, it is a time commitment, and so if you're thinking of doing it, you do have to look at how much time you can allocate in order to make a valuable contribution. But it's certainly something I've learned a lot from, not just from this particular session, but also from generally from all of the other speakers. So it's a great way to personal learning and also to make a contribution in an important area.
Thank you, Nick. Oana? How has your experience been?
For me as well, it was a very rich experience. I think often we are embedded, every day in our everyday life and question, and we think with our colleagues we are in a certain area, so we always tend to somehow think always the same way. And participating in this group is very, in this group and workshops is very rich in terms of being challenged and capturing other perspectives from the same topic, and this is really very very inspiring, and it gives you how can I say more clarity on the different different concerns that can exist around a drug or a discussion. Even having discussions, sometimes some things even are not problems for us, but you suddenly discover that they might be great problems for others. So this is really, I recommend it because really it enriches your view on the things and probably gives you a way to be less stringent on what you deliver. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Oana. Merlin, how about your experiences?
Thanks very much, Chi. I mean, thanks very much for all your help in kind of facilitating this, and also, yeah, as Nick said, like moving us around and making sure that we're delivering on these sections. I think for me, I really recommend it. The point I would really hone in on is this multi-stakeholder aspect. I've definitely learned a lot from hearing different views and understanding other perspectives, because I think we need to think about, to make this change, we need to be breaking down the silos. And I think it's only from engaging in a multi-stakeholder way can we really achieve that. So yeah, for me, I really recommend it, and I found it was very insightful.
Great, thanks, Merlin. And Alex?
Yeah, thanks, Chi, and thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed to work. As I mentioned, I'm working with PFMD for a long time and took part in the earlier mentioned patient engagement quality guidance and quality criteria, 7 quality criteria. And actually, this is the next step. And I would say we started almost from nothing, actually. I remember 1 year ago, we started from some concepts because nobody could advise us on the right way, because if you compare with the clinical studies and preclinical research and discovery, it's completely different situation. A lot of traditional activities in clinical research, but absolutely unclear from which we need to start. And actually we developed a wonderful methodology, wonderful concept. And I would say we will enrich our guidance and thanks to public consultation in this forum as well. So it's a wonderful opportunity. So it's only positive, as usual, positive engagement and great moderation, great facilitation by yourself, Chi, and your colleagues.
Thank you. It's great to hear that you have enjoyed, and definitely that's the purpose, to bring different perspectives together so you can hear from each other. I see, Carol, you wanted to comment?
Yes, because I didn't get the chance to thank you either, and my colleagues and everybody else who's been involved. The design team as well, they really do need a huge applause for helping to get these slides decorated the way that they have, and yourself for facilitating. But I would also like to say that I've learned a lot, and I've learned a lot about the early development phases of research that I wanted patients to get involved in more, but I didn't know a lot about it at all. Mm-hmm. And there is so much still to learn, and I'm still learning. And it is a very valuable experience to get involved in something like this. And I feel very privileged to be a part of it. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Carol. And it's great to hear. It is time consuming. The partnership has been created. We do nurture our partners. We see the value in co-creation. It might take time, but it will bring so much richness into the work, into the outcomes. So the process matters as much as the outcome. That's what we want to say. With that, I would like to share with you what's coming next. How can you be part of this as well? The work is being finalized, and just to Carol's comment on the design team, the PFMD design team actually worked on the slides still 15 minutes before the call started, and we were able to get things together because we kept changing the slides. So thank you so much if anyone is listening. The master draft is being finalized. We just are going through some internal tweaks. We are reviewing with our with the working group, and it will be ready sometime end of summer, early autumn. I don't want to make really specific promises because we are heading into summer vacations, and just making sure that everyone is fresh and available, and then we'll push it out. You can be part of this, and I would love to invite everyone to watch this space, follow PFMD. If you know our speakers, contact them. If you don't know them, you can find them from our signups network platform. You can see Working Group 1 as an initiative, and you can see all the speakers there. Would you like to pilot the guidance? We are looking for projects who would like to test it out in a structured way. So we will have, we will kind of follow you in seeing how you're implementing the guidance. How would you use it? What is your feedback? And follow through your projects once the guidance is out. Let us know. In the end, I'm going to put up a slide with an email address. Tell us, send us an email, tell us what you thought of the session, tell us if you would like to pilot the guidance, and so on. Last questions for you, the audience. We'd like to know which of these sections that you heard of would be the most important for you. Which of those do you think are the most useful for you? How would you use this guidance? So with the team, we came up with a couple of options, and you can choose those from those options. And also, how would you like to, how likely would you use this guidance? We have a scale from 1 to 10. You can glide the scale there. And how likely would you recommend this how-to guidance, knowing what you know today? So the menti.com link is still valid, but we changed the code just slightly. It's 726661, because we want to keep this these questions open for you until end of tomorrow. You can take time, think about, reflect a little bit what you heard, and then tell us what you thought. Only 4 questions. I think we are at time. 2 hours passed really quickly. Thank you so much. It's Friday afternoon, and we still have 69 attendees, so that's really great. I think with that, we will close our session today. Speakers, would you like to say final words?
I would like to start by thanking you and Karina and all the team who supported us for the preparation. As Carol said, they were absolutely extraordinary, and you were very great as always, Chi. So, and Karina, thank you. Thank you to my colleagues, dear speakers. We worked, I think we succeeded. Hope the audience has understood the main points and are now eager to discover the document itself. Thank you.
Yeah, as Chi says, Friday afternoon we still have 60+ people there, so I hope it was interesting. It was great preparing all of this, and I hope we have answered all of the people's questions to the best of our abilities. And if anyone would like to reach out, please do so through Chi or through the platform, and we'll make ourselves available.
And as speakers, if you can, I can get you for one more moment. I'll take a selfie with all of us, because we're not in the same room. So let's try to do it virtually. And unfortunately, we just missed Merlin. He had to go. So let's do us. I'm gonna expand this screen as big as possible, and let's make this a nice one. All right, ready? Can we see? No, I'm not sure if this is gonna work. I'm gonna do one like this and then one just peeking. There we go. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.
And yourself, thank you very much.
So are we going to, you're going to share the the results with us next week, are you, at all, and next steps and whatever?
Yes, so we will share the slides with all the audience. We will go through all the remaining questions in the Q&A, and then for anyone who's still on the call, we will try our best to answer all of those questions. Thank you so much for active participation. For Working Group 1, we have a next monthly call next week on Wednesday.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Have
Bye.
a good
See you
weekend.
soon.
Have a good weekend.
You too. Bye bye, girls. Bye, boys.